Arsenal va a intentar generar peligro de esa manera el equipo de Arteta. El envío cerrado. ¡Gol! Y ahí emergió la cabeza de Gabriel Magallanes, totalmente solo para plantarle un frentazo a la pelota. Gabriel Magallanes.
Gabi! Woohoo! Woohoo! Yes, Gabi! Set pieces again, baby! Come on! Color the Gooners, Color Set pieces again, baby! Yes, Gabi! Color the Gooners, Color the Gooners! Woohoo! Come on! Come on! Come on! Color the Gooners, Color the Gooners, Color the Gooners, Woohoo! Come on, baby! Come on, baby! Come on, baby! Gabi! Color the Gooners, Color the Gooners, Color the Gooners!
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, a very goodly morning to you, and also... Color the Gooners, Color
Goodly morning to you and all the listeners.
All the listeners, yeah.
Do you need to explain what that clip is?
Well, that's Ian Wright reacting to the Arsenal goal. People will have heard it, of course, in the jingle before we started talking. Sometimes I look for a piece of commentary when we score a goal, win a big game, and it's like, oh, will I use this? Will I use that? I saw that clip doing the rounds yesterday. I was like, that's it. I have to use that. How could I not? And it is a very goodly morning, isn't it? I was in the kitchen this morning making breakfast, and I was sort of humming and singing away to myself, and my wife said to me, are you just this happy because Arsenal won? And I said, well, yes, but also because Tottenham lost.
Exactly.
And she said, is life really that simple? I said, yeah, it kind of is, you know?
Can be.
If Tottenham lost every day, the world would be just an amazing place, wouldn't it?
Some people smile because the sun is in the sky. You know what I mean? Some people smile because they wake up and they see their loved ones. I smile because Tottenham are sad. And I'm fine with that.
I'm absolutely fine with that too.
It's a beautiful morning for us all. And I think as well, there's the kind of relief aspect. You know, imagine how awful it would be had the outcome been reversed.
Yeah.
You know, and we've all avoided that fate. I think that's always the blessing. And that's why Derby days feel so high stakes, because the emotional rewards and the emotional punishment can be so intense.
It is one of those games where, you know, sometimes I ask myself, why am I putting myself through this?
Yeah.
Why? But then we win, you know, because it's 0-0 and you're like, oh, God, if this goes the wrong way, I'm going to feel shit. Why am I putting myself through this? How much longer can I put myself through this season after season after season? And then at the end, you're like, that's fucking great. I love this so much.
Do you know what my favourite part of the day was?
What?
I mean, look, there was a lot to like. Obviously, we won a North London derby away from home. Fantastic. But for me, and I know there was a lot of criticism in the UK of the TV coverage and some of the punditry, but I've got to thank the director of the coverage of the show yesterday, because as Arsenal led Spurs 1-0, somebody somewhere decided to cut to a very sad-looking Teddy Sheringham. And I was like, that's where it peaked for me. Just like, you know, he's up there in his corporate box, guest of honour at the toilet bowl. And how fitting that the club have managed to lay on a defeat for him.
God, yeah, that was the icing on the cake, wasn't it? It really was.
It was
the
cherry on the top. I loved it.
The cherry on top of the icing on the cake. It really was. Along with, of course, the least inspiring musical instrument of all time, the pre-game Tottenham trumpet. Is there anything less inspiring in the entire world than that reedy, trumpety, when the Saints go fucking marching in bullshit that they come out with? Oh, look at us. We're singing really slowly. Fuck off.
Yeah. I mean, and listen, it's becoming a happy hunting ground for Arsenal. Three consecutive wins.
3 in a row. That's really quite something, because it wasn't that long ago we had a very painful defeat inflicted on us there, and there was all this talk about, the balance of power and all that kind of stuff. 3 in a row. 3 in a row. I think that's the first time it's happened since the 80s. Is that right? I saw.
It's a long time for sure.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Loved it. And I think as well, to kind of look at it from a slightly more serious perspective, I think in the context of the week that was and everything that had gone on around Arsenal and injuries and all sorts and a bit of doom and gloom, I think, particularly online about some of those absentees, I think to go and win ahead of what's to come as well over the next 7 days was just absolutely fantastic.
I do think there is something quite significant to that, to be honest, because, all the talk pre-game was Arsenal without Declan Rice and without Martin Odegaard, who are two, as we know, very, very important players.
Yeah.
Do you remember some years ago we played, was it an FA Cup semi-final, something like that, and Arsene Wenger left out. He might have left out Andre Arshavin. He might have left out.
It was against Chelsea. He left him on the bench. I remember at Wembley.
His rationale for that was like he wanted to win the game with players who could take some belief from doing it without, some of the best players. I don't really understand the logic to this day.
Yeah, it didn't work.
It didn't work. No. It did not work, and everyone went, you should have played, one of your best players. That would have been a better thing to do. But I was reminded of that going into this game yesterday, where, the focus was so much on those two players. I think it, in some ways, did a slight disservice to the players that we had available yesterday. That they are obviously great players and very important to the team, and Odegaard and Rice, I think, are quite fundamental. And when you lose 2/3 of your midfield, I think it's only normal to be slightly concerned or worried about how that's going to impact the way you play in a big game away from home in the derby, which has this sort of underlying chaos to it anyway, right? But it's sort of overlooked the fact that we've got a brilliant back four. We've got a fantastic goalkeeper. We do have other midfield options. We do have excellent forward players who are in good form. And, I do wonder if, this team, I think Arteta said it afterwards, we will take a lot of belief from this, because I think in some quarters Arsenal were kind of written off going into this game. And it was something I said on the blog, like I would have been way more worried if we'd had an injury crisis at the back or an absentee crisis at the back than in midfield. Like if Saliba and Gabriel weren't available for this game, I don't know if we could have done that. Whereas the ability to lean into the strength of what we've developed over the last number of years defensively, for me, was absolutely key to winning this game yesterday.
Yeah, and it's funny, I was reminded of that same semi-final where Arshavin was left out. I know for entirely different reasons, and it didn't work on that occasion, but in the sense of what it could do for this team to learn that they could win. I think maybe particularly without Martin Odegaard, maybe perhaps because, Declan Rice wasn't here 2 years ago when we led a pretty strong title challenge in that season, but Odegaard has kind of been at the heart of absolutely everything we've done. And he's sort of been a transformational figure, really, in the club's entire trajectory. If you look at the timing of his arrival and the way in which we've played football since he's come in, he does everything on the ball, off the ball. He is the captain. And I think being able to cope without him and being able to find a way to win. I think that's the really encouraging part of this is we found a way to win, and we had the tools at our disposal to do that. And, you know, even Gary Neville, I think, was impressed by the way in which Arsenal kind of dug in, leaned into their strengths, as you say, and there almost became this kind of inevitability about it. I mean, that roar from the crowd when Arsenal won that corner, which they ultimately scored, was a roar which signified we think something's on here.
Yeah, for sure.
And they were proven right. And it was sort of gloriously predictable, if that makes any sense. Yeah,
I know what you mean. We'll come back around to that, but let's start with what he did in the absence of Odegaard and Rice, and also Ricardo Calafiori, and also Alexander Zinchenko, which meant we had a very, very youthful looking bench. I think the average age of the bench was 17. Not quite, but Sterling and Jesus obviously pushing that up. But there was a name on the bench I hadn't seen before. We'd seen Aidan Heaven and Lewis Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri, of course, but Ismail Kabia, I don't quite know. I'd never really heard of him before, which I think demonstrated just how much we were missing going into this game. There was a big onus on the players who started, and there was a big onus maybe on the two experienced attacking players on the bench. But beyond that, there wasn't a great deal on that bench to change around. But I suppose the various permutations we considered before the game, the one that made the most sense, I guess, going into this game, because of the high stakes, because of what it might take tactically, organizationally, from a discipline point of view, I mean that sort of positionally and that kind of stuff, was bringing in Jorginho alongside Thomas Partey. And leaning into the experience of those two. There were other options that he could have chosen. There were other systems and formations he could have chosen, but he went with this one. And I understand why he did it, and I guess it paid off. But what was your thought when you saw the lineup?
I think he sort of got it right, to be honest with you. I never quite believed that he would pick an Ethan Nwaneri or a 17-year-old player to come into a game of this magnitude. Maybe some managers might, but I'm not sure Mikel Arteta is that manager, certainly yet at this time. I thought he'd go with the experience. I thought he'd go with Havertz and Trossard kind of dovetailing through the middle, trying to replicate that Odegaard-Havertz relationship. Beyond that, it was kind of as expected. I thought he'd stick with Timber at left back. I mean, I didn't know at the time. I think that we were going to be without Zinchenko and Calafiori. I wasn't too surprised. I mean, listen, I like all Arsenal fans, I had my concerns. I had my worries about what we'd be able to offer in midfield. But I thought Kai Havertz did a really terrific job and made up for some of those absentees with an incredibly energetic team performance. Selfless
performance from Havertz, wasn't it? I know we're sort of taking a tangent here, but it just struck me at the end that he is a really, really selfless player, and people can have their opinions about where he's best and everything else, but the work he does for this team is phenomenal. Phenomenal. The defending from the front is a bit of a cliche, but he was the guy doing it. He was the guy chasing down, stopping the left backer at one point. He just stopped him getting the ball high up the pitch. Spurs got a throw, but he, put in some really hard yards to get over there and just make a block. Simple thing. Doesn't look like much, but it just means the ball stays in the Tottenham half,
And he does it with such consistency and over such prolonged periods, often over 90 minutes. He's a fantastic team player. And I suppose an upshot of some of the changes made was that Gabriel Martinelli came in on the left-hand side. But I liked that. I thought that this was a game that could suit him. There are basically two very obvious ways to get at Spurs. One is the counter-attack, because they have a lot of possession high up the pitch, but do leave themselves a little exposed. And one is set pieces. And I suppose with this lineup, we were quite well set up to do either of those things.
Yes. I mean, defensively as well, he's a presence in our box, when corners are coming in. I think Gabriel obviously went on a kind of mad one in the last 20 minutes of the game, just getting rid of everything. He's just unbelievable, and we'll come to him. But I think Havertz made more clearances than Gabriel, and that tells you something about what his importance is and what his role is in this team. So here's another mad stat, by the way.
Go on.
Which I think tells you maybe something about our performance and the way we played, and maybe the way we were impacted without Odegaard or Rice. David Raya attempted the second most passes in the team. Yeah. Only William Saliba attempted more passes than David Raya, which I guess says something about how we played and maybe the lack of control we had in key areas of the pitch. And I think not just that, I thought Arteta was quite... I enjoyed what he said about, what we did on the ball, because he said, look, it wasn't great. I don't think we've done, especially with the ball, the simple things right at all. So there were aspects of this performance that I think the manager will look at and expect better from certain members of his team. But, I think the overriding thing that I took from this performance was, even if some players weren't at their best, even if there were some mistakes here and there, and potentially some quite dangerous mistakes at times in areas of the pitch that you don't want to make them in, the defensive organization and the how do I put it, the desire for everybody to do their job defensively was there right from the first minute. The wingers, we talk about them as a potential threat getting in behind, but the way that they worked tracking back to deny Tottenham space in the wide areas on the rare occasion when Tottenham decided that they would go into wide areas was unbelievable. And Tottenham, of course, as we know, like to play everything through the middle. I think Partey and Jorginho struggled a bit in this game, but at the same time, they created that shield in front of the back four. Tottenham never seemed to learn. They just kept coming down the middle, and run into a brick wall and just try it over and over and over again. And I think you have to credit everybody over the course of this game, all 11 players and the subs that came on, for maintaining that discipline right throughout, because it might look easy, but I don't really think it is, particularly in the environment that they were playing this game in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think you've got to remember, this is a team that's coming back from an international break. Maybe it's understandable there's a bit of a lack of fluency, and maybe the organisation, it could be understandable if it wasn't quite in place, if not everyone was fully aware of where they needed to be at all times. And yet Arsenal were absolutely dogged and committed in the way they defended. The wide players were exemplary, Martinelli and Saka. But honestly, I do think throughout the team, there was such a commitment to protecting that goal. And it really shone through. So I loved that element of it. I agree with you. It wasn't kind of a vintage performance in some ways, but it was about finding a way to win on the day. And that's what we did. I
mean, everybody played their part early on. David Raya had a couple of interventions to make. There was a save at his near post, and there was one where I think he clawed the ball away, and there was a guy at the back post who may or may not have had a fairly easy chance at goal there. But, do we talk Raya now, or do we talk Raya a bit later?
Well, I mean, we might as well now. I did think this was another really strong game from him. You mentioned those first half interventions, but it's almost more important in the second half when Spurs do get the ball wide and sling one into the box, and he's able to just come and claim it.
Yeah.
Look at what they've got in their goal and the difference there in terms of kind of the sense of panic that permeates through their back line every time the ball goes out for a set piece.
Yeah.
Raya is calmness personified in those situations. And I think if you look around the Premier League, there aren't many keepers who are that authoritative when they come off their line. And I think as a central defender, as well as any defender, it must be such a gift to have that behind you.
Yeah, I agree. like we talked about him after the Villa game, where as I think you said it, maybe the meat and drink of goalkeeping, coming to claim some crosses. It doesn't look particularly spectacular, but it just has such a big impact on how the game goes. And he did the same in the second half. Very secure on the ball when he needed to be on the ball. When he needed to get rid of it, he got rid of it. His ability to sort of take the sting out of any opposition territory or domination of territory is really interesting to me. The way he catches, he'll fall on the ball.
Yeah.
And part of that is just allowing us to get reorganized. So when we talk about our defensive discipline and shape and organization, what Raya does is part of that, because it allows everybody to get back into position. Particularly at a point in the game where your legs are heavy, it takes a couple of extra seconds to get yourself properly organized and back into position. But those things that he does have a big impact on how we stay compact and how we keep our shape at a point in the game where things can get a little bit stretched. Like there was in the second half, I was beginning to worry a little bit that the game was getting stretched, but I don't know exactly how we solved it, but all of a sudden it wasn't stretched anymore.
Yeah.
The distances that we kept, with the shape that we had, defensively in that second half, that there was just no way for Tottenham to break it down, whether they went central or whether they went wide. The Arsenal players were organised and on them, and sling in crosses if you want, James Maddison, while you're thinking about fucking playing darts or being the man at the roast dinner. It's meat and drink for our central defenders,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you make a great point there about how a goalkeeper has the potential to control the tempo of a game. Obviously we think of outfield players doing that, maybe a Jorginho or Martin Odegaard with the way they use the ball, but the manner in which he's able to, take the ball, wait 6 seconds or probably sometimes 30 seconds before getting it back in play. He's playing the second most passes on the pitch. So he actually is a very big influence in the speed of play, the rhythm of the play, and enables us to kind of steer that to suit what we need. And I thought Raya was excellent in that respect yesterday. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't, you're right. There were. My feeling about the game was it suited Spurs for it to be quite chaotic. And there was little periods, maybe particularly at the start of the second half, where I felt like they kind of got their way there and it became a bit stretched and end-to-end. And you started to see maybe our lack of legs in midfield here and there. But for the most part, Arsenal were able to kind of control the rhythm of the match and keep it at a relatively low tempo. And I think that definitely played into their hands more than Spurs.
So first half, we probably had the best chance of the game. Leandro Trossard playing and Gabriel Martinelli, where...
Yeah. Brilliant from Trossard, I thought, by the way.
Absolutely fantastic. An amazing pass. And Martinelli in behind, could he have got his head up and looked across and seen if Saka was there? I think maybe he could have. I don't necessarily blame him for having a go, though, when you're an attacker and when you're through on goal. Your eyes light up, and I think, you want maybe the best attackers to be clinical in that situation and put the ball in the back of the net. Just as he has for maybe the last few months, there's just a lack of conviction in the finish. It's not quite what you need. It's not quite decisive enough. The connection with the ball, you could see what he was trying to do, but I don't think he got it right.
It's difficult because there is a narrative out there about Martinelli, isn't there, at the moment? It's sort of part of the discourse that, the end product's not quite there. And I'm wary of letting that kind of inform my analysis too much. But it was difficult to get away from that feeling, I think, yesterday. Because I thought he was a threat. I thought that flank, we carried a lot of threat, and I thought he and Timber combined pretty well at times. Timber was getting forward and overlapping here and there. And yet we didn't get much out of it, for all that kind of opportunity. And this sort of exemplified that, really. I mean, I think in that position, either either he's got to square it to Saka, or he's got to really drive at the goal with conviction, and probably take it on a little bit before hitting it. And I feel like he sort of did neither of those things, which maybe is indicative of a player for whom it's just not quite flowing in the final third at this moment in time. But it was a moment that showed one of the ways that you could get at Spurs. And actually, I think when Mikel Arteta reflects on this game and what Arsenal could have done better, I think he will look at some of these sort of almost counter-attack opportunities or chances to get him behind and think we probably could have executed better in one or two of those positions.
Sure, I agree. After that, the first half was about yellow cards.
Lots of them.
Lots of yellow cards. The Jurriën Timber one, of course, is the one that was analysed to death on television.
Yeah, what did you think?
I don't even think it's a yellow card.
Right.
I think any talk about that being a red card is pure... Like, I don't want to throw out the word agenda because it just sounds conspiracy theorist or something. But why on earth are they talking about that being a potential red card? Redknapp and Ferdinand and whoever saying, oh, he's very lucky to stay on the pitch. It's like, well, he didn't really touch Porro. Porro went down and stayed down for such a long period of time, writhing around on the ground as if he'd sustained a serious injury. He didn't even get any treatment. It's pure play acting from Porro, and I think Timber's actually quite unlucky to get a yellow card there.
Yeah, it's interesting. My first reaction when he went in for the challenge was one of being really pleased because it was a bit of a 50-50, and it was maybe the first proper 50-50 I've seen Timber go for since the injury. And I thought it actually tells you quite a lot about how he's feeling and getting more confident in his body, that he was prepared to put his body in the way, essentially, there. That's it. When I saw it from the initial TV angle, I could see why there was a need to look at it, because it kind of looks like he comes over the ball. But as soon as you see the replay from the other side, yeah, I agree. It's nowhere near a red card. I think a yellow is a bit harsh. Maybe a yellow was kind of, I don't know, fair given everything that went on afterwards and a bit of argy-bargy and back and forth. But the idea that it should be a sending off, I think, is way out.
Oh, yeah. Complete nonsense. Complete nonsense. I really, seeing as we're on Timber, we might as well talk about him.
Yeah.
I think this was the first performance maybe where we've seen him in the vicinity of properly match fit. And it was so impressive. I love his aggression. I love the aggression with which he plays. Not just off the ball, not just in the tackle, but on the ball as well. He is, the afters with Vicario were brilliant, weren't they? I love that. And I love Bukayo Saka actually coming over straight away. Who's the first guy on the scene? Bukayo Saka, to back up his mate. I always remember this game we played at Liverpool, and it was actually Mikel Arteta who got clobbered in the head by Jordan Henderson, maybe. And no Arsenal player reacted to it in any way. And I always remember thinking, Jesus, that would not happen. That should not happen. If you see your teammate get a clatter to the head like that, you've got to fucking back him up. And I wonder if that's been in some way informative for Arteta in terms of how he manages his team and talks to his players about what's expected from them in situations like that. Obviously, he's not going out there saying, lads, get in scraps. But if it happens, don't leave your mate on his own. And I loved Timber's reaction to Vicario, and I loved Saka's reaction to Vicario having a go at Timber. It was straight over. It was protective. It was like, no, you want to fight one of us, you're going to fight all of us. And it's small things like that. We can talk about the quality of the defensive performance that Arsenal put in, but those things are connected. Do you know what I mean? That willingness to fight for each other, not just when crosses are coming in or if there are tackles to be made, but when things like that happen in games. That tells you a lot about the way a team believes in each other or what they want to do for each other on the pitch.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. And there were some really nice moments yesterday which just showed that little bit of enmity between the players and the clubs, right down to the mascot, Arsenal mascot shoving his Spurs counterpart in the pre-match tunnel. But, there's like a moment where David Raya, I think, was hugging a Spanish teammate.
It was Porro, I think, yeah.
Was it Porro? Okay,
yeah.
Right. So a guy he knows from previous. And behind him, you can see kind of Ben White and Jurrien Timber, like ice cold, sort of staring straight ahead. And I think, that moment between Bukayo and Timber is one that will certainly endear him to the Arsenal fans. I mean, Big Hat McCready said, "Good morning, gents. Was this a win the crowd game for Timber?" And I think it was. I think it was kind of a bit of a coming out in some respects.
Sure.
We've waited so long to see him play a game of this size, a game of this importance, and he's been waiting and he's been trying to regain that sharpness. I thought this was his best performance of the season so far.
Sure.
And I think he showed what he offers, which is like outstanding one-on-one defensive ability, real kind of tigerish aggression, and a sort of Lauren-esque give no fucks attitude. I
did see that comparison made with Lauren. I can't remember exactly where it was, so apologies, but I saw it and I meant to bring it up because, it's right there, that kind of hardness that's, sometimes you see a player who's, got this kind of facade, this front of hardness or toughness, but sometimes a player has just got that baked in.
Yeah.
And he looks like one of those to me.
I actually don't know very much about Jurrien Timber's life, so this may be way out, but he has a kind of, I completely agree, a very authentic, believable toughness.
Yes, 100%.
And that comes with a bit of aura. So I thought this was a great game for him. And it is interesting, isn't it? We've spent a lot of pre-season kind of pondering where might he play. We saw him at centre-half. We saw him at right-back. He's currently in at left-back. And he's making a very good case for himself.
Yes. Yeah, really, really solid performance. And I think, what is it? Only his fifth game for the club. Official game, because he missed all of last season. I think we said it a couple of weeks ago, he looks like someone who's ready to make up for lost time, and that performance yesterday was, I think, a real step forward for him, and it was really, really pleasing. What else should we talk about when it comes to the second half? Well, at halftime we were a little bit worried, weren't we? After all the flurry of yellow cards, we were a bit worried that there might be a red. But
it felt like it was imminent, it felt like it was inevitable. Because he was booking people. I mean, I have to say, I was really, really surprised. Is it Jared Gillett? Is that his name?
Yeah.
The referee. When he did the double Spurs booking right on half time. That's very unusual.
It is, but I mean, I think there's no question that he got that right. I will say the William Saliba booking did my fucking head in. Because
kicking the ball away, yeah.
Well, he didn't, but he just picked it up and ran off with it, delaying the restart. But I was
really hoping that wasn't going to become the sort of defining narrative of the game.
Same. But does that rule only apply to Arsenal? Somebody fucking tell me, because you see it happening in every game. It even happened in this game. Some Tottenham players did exactly the same thing. Just kicked the ball away or just, literally delayed the restart. But somehow it only appears to apply to Arsenal players.
Yeah, we've got to be extra careful, it seems. I mean, I felt for him because it's pure instinct, right? He's done that his whole career. That's what defenders do when they concede a foul. And you could almost see it in his face. He did it and then sort of realised and was like, shit, they're going to get me for it. So there were bookings being dished out all over the place. I did sort of worry that the referee had slightly lost control of it. Like that, when we talk about game management, I do think, a derby like this is when that needs to be particularly present. But actually, I think our goal, which came relatively early in the second half, I think was it about 15 minutes in, something like that.
64th minute.
Right. It kind of changed the dynamic and the complexion of the game because our task became sort of much more straightforward, really. And I think that a game that was threatening to become a bit pinball-y and a bit ragged became more structured after that.
It didn't feel like it was going to be one of those helter-skelter 3-2 derbies at that point. No. We got to the hour mark, and that's when I was thinking, why do I do this to myself?
Yeah. If Spurs had scored the first goal, who knows, right? Yeah. The wheels could have come off the game, and I think it could have got crazy, as they often do. But for Arsenal, this was all about exerting control. And once they got the goal that they needed, we just kind of tightened our grip.
I mean, it's such an interesting goal to look at because just before the goal, they had a corner and the ball came back in. It was a really poor touch from Partey. It fell for Brennan Johnson. Gabriel made the block and we hacked the ball clear, went upfield. I think it was Havertz held it up really well. Martinelli, Saka, we won the corner. And from there, obviously, we score. But like those moments, I think when Arteta talks about not doing simple things right, that was one of those moments. There was another one later in the game from Partey as well. If you remember, he got a foot in Gabriel just in time when Partey stuck a foot out and deflected it almost into the path of a Tottenham player. And it was one of those where you're going, oh, if he doesn't time this absolutely perfectly, it's going to be a penalty, you know? Mm-hmm. But, you know, Gabriel made the clearance in the initial move I'm talking about. Then up the other end, again, why are they talking about a foul on Christian Romero? Why?
I haven't actually seen that. Is that something people are saying?
Yeah, they were talking about that on Sky afterwards. It was all about like, oh, he's pushed him, he's shoved him in the back.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
yeah,
No,
Romero
man.
needs to be a bit stronger. Yeah, but that's a shove in the back. And they're all going, yeah, that's a foul. I'm like, hang on a minute. Do you remember that game last year against Newcastle when Joe Linton literally climbed on Gabriel's back with two hands and everybody was at pains to say, well, that's not a foul. The defender just needs to be a bit stronger there, even though Joe Linton is fucking kneeling on his neck and pushing him by the shoulders face first into the dirt. That's not a foul, but a tiny little touch on Romero from Gabriel. I mean, it's bullshit, but it's, you know what it is? It's just really, really bad defending from Romero because he's looking at Gabriel and he just runs ahead of him. It's like criminal to do that if you're an experienced defender, you know, to let yourself get the wrong side of another player, particularly somebody as good in the air as Gabriel, right? To get the wrong side of him, Gabriel just gives him a little touch in the back just to sort of continue his momentum as he's running the wrong way, by the way. Steps back, plants home the header. It's a great delivery from Bukayo Saka, and it's 1-0.
It's expertly done by Gabriel.
That's
I really do think, you know, we often talk about centre forwards being cute in the penalty area. Oh, look, you know, they've feinted one way, they've run the other. Yeah. Really intelligent stuff and, you know, initiated a bit of contact with the defender. Well, Gabriel is every bit as cute as any centre forward in the way that he creates that opportunity for himself. The movement, the little bump on Romero, which categorically should not be a foul.
No.
The timing of the leap, which I think is often an underestimated part of scoring a headed goal. You know, can you jump, but can you time that jump to meet the cross perfectly? And the contact he gets on it is fantastic. I mean, it's past the keeper before he can move.
Yeah.
So we know how good he can be in those scenarios. He absolutely loved it as well, loved his celebration. He really, really enjoyed it, gave it a big vamos in front of the away fans. And I think we've got to give mention to that delivery from Bukayo Saka because, you know, Gary Neville was fuming, wasn't he, when he played a short one in the first half, which I think was a bit unnecessary. I understood where he's coming from in terms of saying, oh, the keeper looks a bit shaky, get it under him. But when the whole stadium is expecting you to do that, there can sometimes be a benefit in trying something else, right? Pull in a surprise. But this delivery was perfect. It made Romero look bad. It made Vicario look bad. But the reason it did that is because it was right into that area where there's that little tiny bit of doubt about whose ball that is.
Yes.
And Arsenal exploited it perfectly.
100%. Not to mention the fact that Ben White got involved with James Maddison right in front of the goalkeeper. I think that's part of this goal as well. Like the delivery is amazing. The work that Gabriel does and the finish is fantastic. But Vicario doesn't quite know whether to get involved in the Ben White Maddison situation or come for the ball. I think he is quite a sort of Almunia-esque goalkeeper, isn't he? In that he doesn't come off his line. Like, he's a good shot stopper, but does not come off his line at all. And he's completely distracted, even for like half a second, by the fact that Maddison and White are sort of scrapping away in front of him.
Well, I think Ben White might be being even more deliberate than that. I mean, it feels like, he kind of takes the line of him and Maddison across the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So as much as I've seen Vicario killed for he doesn't come and get it, he actually can't come at that point in time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to do Ben White a disservice here. I think it is deliberate. I think it is part of it. I think it's part of the strategy. Did you see the Arteta interview on TV afterwards, where the interviewer was asking him about, is that sort of distracting the goalkeeper? Is that part of your, paraphrasing here, but is that part of the plan? He's going, no. We want to put a good ball in, and it's all about, being able to head the ball. And she pressed him again about the rough and tumble in the box. Does it, is that part of? No. Absolutely played that with a straight bat. But clearly, this is part of the work that they do on the training ground. Quality of delivery, of course, is paramount. Quality of finish and having players who are so good in the air like we have makes it, easier to pull off these kinds of moves. But part of it is the sort of chaos that you can create in the box, which distracts defenders, which distracts goalkeepers. And that was completely evident in this case. Every part of that goal was rehearsed. Not just just the delivery, not just the header, but the movement in the box as well.
Yeah, that's going on, Nico Jova's PowerPoint presentation about his set piece skill. I mean, it was a brilliantly executed goal. And at that time in the game, a slight sucker punch to Spurs, who'd had a few moments, I think, in the start of that second half. You mentioned that Gabriel block literally a minute before he'd scored at the other end. So, yeah, it was. And as soon as we scored, you almost could feel the stadium deflate, because everybody knows now how good Arsenal are at defending their own box.
Well, that's it. The question really was, before the game, how are Arsenal going to cope without Odegaard and Rice? But nobody asked the question of, how are this Tottenham team going to break down this Arsenal defence? Particularly when they're in the mood that they were in. And, I think Gabriel was completely energised by the goal.
Possessed, really.
Yeah, not just because of scoring and the achievement, if you want to call it that, of scoring a goal away from home at White Hart Lane. But, when you think about players, if you're under the cosh, if a team is lumping balls into your box, if a team is, trying to fashion low crosses, high crosses, whatever it is there anybody you would want in your team more than Gabriel? I love William Saliba. I think he's an amazing defender, but in a slightly different way from Gabriel. Whereas I think if you put him under pressure, he absolutely fucking loves it. He loves making those challenges. He loves making those blocks. There was one, and we've seen it so many times from him, where I think he blocked the ball out for a corner and he's like, that kind of stuff, he loves it so much and he can do it so well. And it wasn't just him. I remember one occasion, I think it might have been Trossard who lost the ball high up the pitch and Spurs came forward, and all of a sudden Gabriel Martinelli was back there defending. And this is what I mean about the hard yards that this team puts in for each other, that if somebody makes a mistake higher up the pitch, there's somebody there to bail them out. And that was the case yesterday. We weren't flawless. We did make some mistakes. We did maybe hand some opportunities to Tottenham that we shouldn't have. I think almost every dangerous thing that Tottenham had came from us being a little bit careless. But there was always somebody there to try and make up for it, or to put pressure on, or to make a block, or make a challenge, or head the ball away. It was just so impressive.
Yeah, and listen, a lot of those times it was Gabriel. I did think he was brilliant. And I love how everything he does is accompanied with the blood-curdling scream of a demented toddler. Do you know what I mean?
I have a bit here, actually. I think I have it. People were asking me, could I get the Gabriel screaming into the jingle today, and I couldn't because I couldn't isolate it because they were talking on Sky. But this is sort of end of the game where they're just having a little bit of a chat, and you can hear Gabriel in the background. Here it is.
If one of them players doesn't do their job, they just get put like a knife through butter. Spurs go.
There are dogs in the area going, what? Who's what? Like, it's so high pitched.
It is. It really is. It sounds like a sort of throttled chicken, but who cares?
Who cares?
Because he's delivering massive performances. And I think, to your point about who would you rather have, I think if you ask William Saliba, who is the best defender when it comes to defending and clearing your own lines under pressure, I'm sure he'd say Gabriel.
I think so.
I think there's that degree of mutual respect and understanding between them.
We'll see how happy Saliba was for him when he scored. It was lovely.
Exactly. So, another big performance from him. And I'm just so glad that, we've started this season with those two settled and fit and playing together. It just gives a tremendous foundation.
We did see Ethan Nwaneri towards the end. There was a debut for Raheem Sterling, of course. Gabriel Jesus came on. And
that was quite newsworthy that Jesus is available again as well. And part of the group, and obviously Sterling coming on. Nice game in which to make your debut. Nwaneri, do you think Nwaneri was in the plan, or do you think, because Saka went down, didn't he?
Yeah, Saka went down and they had to make a change.
Looked like crap to me, to be honest.
I hope so. He seemed okay at the end of the game. I saw him, doing the rounds with, I think he was having a conversation with David Raya at one point. He didn't look particularly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But he was pointing to his thigh, so maybe there's something going on there. I don't quite know. Hopefully nothing serious. But, I know there wasn't actually much choice for Mikel Arteta in that scenario, but I was really glad to see Nwaneri come on. And actually, I thought he did well. I thought he had some nice moments, kept it simple. There was a bit of opportunity maybe for him to make a little bit of an impact on the ball. But I think that will be, what was he on the pitch? 10 minutes, something like that. But those will be very useful 10 minutes for him to come on in that atmosphere, in those circumstances, with, a goal to protect, a lead to protect, and, playing his part in, what I think is a very, very important win for this team. It was good to see.
Incredible experience.
Yes.
As well. And I thought the tactical use of him was quite sensible. It seemed that Arteta basically told him to play off the front and, asked Sterling and Jesus to do more of the doggy work, as it were, chasing back after fullbacks, which is probably wise, I think, when you've got a 17-year-old there who's still learning the role in the system.
I did enjoy that, like when Eri came on, and I think it was Gary Neville talking about it, how, Jesus, he's telling him to stay central. I'll do the defensive work out here. Use my experience. You don't get too worried about this. Stay central. Be part of that front two. I'll do this. And then he gave away a really silly free kick in a dangerous area.
Yeah. It was incredible timing. But, I'm pleased for him that he's involved, and great to see, the academy players start to get some sort of competitive minutes. And I probably without the spate of injuries we've had, it doesn't happen. But I think it's significant that he got on, and hopefully the start of a really important season for him. Yes,
let's hope so. And overall, a weekend when Man City won, and we had to respond.
Liverpool lost, which was good.
Liverpool lost, yeah. We had to show what we were made of. Going back to what we were talking about at the start, I'm really pleased, obviously, that we won the game, but I'm pleased that this is a group of players who are capable, even if we lose a couple. And I know people looked at the bench and said, do we have a problem with depth? And I get that. But when you think about who we have absent, right? Zinchenko, Calafiori, Marino, Odegaard, Rice. 5 players on the bench who, or starting even. Some of those players would obviously have been starting, but it would have given the bench a completely different complexion going into this game. But we had enough quality and we had enough depth to win this game without those players. So while I understand some concerns about, how light our bench was, we are dealing with some difficult circumstances and injuries with a couple of players that are really quite unfortunate. A suspension for Rice, Zinchenko's calves made of fucking Angel Delight or whatever they are, they're gone again. We still had the depth. That's depth. What we had yesterday was the depth to win a game in the absence of 5 first team players or first team squad members. So I think that aspect of it is very, very pleasing for me.
And look at who those first 2 subs were. I know there might be some question marks over their recent form, but Gabriel Jesus and Raheem Sterling, that's a vast amount of experience and quality and goals in Premier League terms to be able to bring off the bench. So, I think we did actually show our mettle, really, in this game. And something I haven't heard many people talk about either is the fact we were coming off a draw with Brighton. So I think with that result and with the Etihad on the horizon, I think it was actually quite important that we won this match. Not essential, but I think it's a huge boost that we did. And sets up the next couple of games beautifully.
Yes, a Champions League trip to Atalanta. Thank you, by the way, to UEFA for giving us a Thursday game before we go to Manchester City on Sunday. Very, very kind of you. But there you go. That's just another thing that we're going to have to deal with and another challenge we're going to have to face. And I think, Arteta will be very pleased about the way his players rose to the challenge of yesterday and came away with all 3 points. Is there anything else on this, or will we go into a little break and do some questions?
I think exactly that.
All right. We'll be back with your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer the questions that you sent to us on threads at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog, also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. James, I'm being the gracious host today, and I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, a bit of a pivot away from the game. I'm sure we'll come out and discuss that more. But Ben Stewart Film asked us, very goodly morning, guys. Manchester City's trial for alleged breaches starts today. Are you expecting much from it? Whether we'll hear about it much publicly, I don't know, but it feels inevitable that they'll get away with any wrongdoing.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, to be honest.
Oh, man, that's not what I wanted you to say.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love for them to be hauled over the coals.
Sure.
If the evidence is there and if they're guilty of what they've been accused of, I think they should be very harshly punished. I just don't really have a great deal of faith that will happen. I could be completely wrong. Maybe the Premier League's prosecution panel or however this thing is set up, have a slam dunk case. I just think the resources that Manchester City have will make it very, very, very difficult for them to get the verdict that they want. But maybe that's just sort of me steeling myself for the disappointment, because I think maybe we have, and maybe Liverpool fans in recent years will have had quite a lot invested in the idea that some sort of justice would be meted out to Manchester City for what they've done. And how they've done it, I mean, what they've done is put together a brilliant football team with the best manager in the world, basically, and some of the best players in the world. But financially, have they broken the rules? well, we'll find out in due course.
Certainly appear to have bent them
yes,
based on the information that's publicly
they're
available.
Very bendy rules. But I don't know. I think maybe I am steeling myself for disappointment, but I don't think we'll get what we want from this.
At this point in time, are you in a place where if they were punished, let's say they were heavily deducted points or something like that, would that take any shine off it for you if Arsenal won the league?
No. You still have to beat 19 other teams. You know, the idea that if Manchester City are docked however many points, right, this season.
A bajillion points, let's just say.
Let's just say a bajillion and one for good measure. The idea that it's then a slam dunk for Arsenal to go and win the league, I think is just wrong. You know, it is a competitive league. There are other good teams in this division. And, you know, I think we would have a great chance, obviously. But, you know, there's a lot of football to play over the course of the season. Plus, we don't know how long exactly this thing is going to take, do we?
No.
It could be a long time.
Yeah, and there might be appeals and all sorts. I think they'll get them on something. I really do. I just think there's no way the league can have any credibility if they charge them with 115 counts and they're found, you know, not guilty on 115. I think that would just be absolutely extraordinary. I mean, listen, I don't preclude it happening. It might happen, as well as assembling a great football team and a great set of coaches. They put together a pretty decent legal team as well. I mean, I always sort of think we're really through the looking glass now when you get like Man City fans unveiling banners with lawyers on them during games. But that is sort of the world we live in. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens. It feels weird that it's happening during a season, you know, and that it really feels like something that should have been resolved in an off season, and then everyone knows the parameters for that season when they're getting into them. I know this point's been made in the past about, you know, teams at the other end of the table being deducted points and all sorts. It does feel a bit odd that, you know, the goalposts might move essentially. But yeah, I hope there can be a good outcome.
Do you think there might be any kind of plea bargain outcome? Is that even possible? I don't know.
What do you mean? Like, give me an example.
Like, okay, we'll take a couple of charges if you drop a load of charges.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, you get a bit, we get a bit. It's not as serious as it might be if we go all the way. You know, I don't know. I don't know if that's something City would be prepared to do. My suspicion is that they wouldn't, because any kind of admission to any charge probably opens them up to other aspects. And, you know, let's not forget there is, I think, quite a lot of evidence. If you remember the UEFA case a few years ago, in inverted commas, got away with it, not because they were innocent, but because I think there was a time constraint on when those charges could be applied. So
absolutely. I think they'll do everything they can to prove their innocence. I think that it's not, I mean, they have kind of unlimited resource to try and do it, but also it's not just a kind of sporting question. It's sort of an ethical question, really, for the ownership, for a nation. You know, I think it's a sort of matter of principle for them, isn't it, that they are proven innocent. So I don't see them accepting any kind of plea bargain or anything that would suggest their guilt on any aspect. It's really, really hard to say or know, but it is definitely going to be kind of the subplot of the season, isn't it? Alongside the football. But we can't control it. And that's what Mikel Arteta will be thinking, and I'm sure what he'll be telling his players. It's not something we can control. We can control what we do at the Etihad on Sunday. And all focus rightly will be on that. All
right, here is a question from, I think it's Sammy. The formatting here is a little weird, but it's from the Discord. He says, "Goodly morning, Jensen. Fuck Spurs. Just how underrated is Bukayo Saka? Of course, we all know about his goal contribution stats, but his defensive work in this game was outstanding. I counted 5 occasions in the first 30 minutes when he made vital defensive contributions from the edge of our box to the edge of theirs. I'm not sure I can think of a single player, past or present, who contributes quite as much in defence in combination with the forward output he has. And in a similar vein, there was a moment in the second half where he headed the ball over an opponent, took it down, spun him, then laid it off, and the commentators didn't even mention what a sublime bit of skill it was. Having won 3 points and performed pretty well away from home without Rice and Odegaard, is Saka really the player that we cannot live without?"
Very possibly. Very possibly. I mean, a lot of that, I think, will depend on how Raheem Sterling settles in and what he's able to do in terms of whether or not we have a replacement. He's had a very good start to the season, 4 assists already, just the 1 goal from his 4 Premier League appearances. But, those goal contributions are right up there. Gary Neville said yesterday he thinks defensively he's the best in the league, Bukayo Saka, which I found really interesting because I don't think it's an aspect of his performances you hear Arsenal fans talk about a great deal. I think inevitably we're just more focused on sort of the more fun stuff, but... He probably is better in that respect than he gets credit for. And for me, what underlines Saka's excellence is just the consistency of his output. Whether that's in terms of goals, assists, work rate. He turns up week after week, and it won't always. Not everything always comes off for him. As a wide player, sometimes you don't beat your man, or your cross misses the mark, or a shot flies past the post, but his bravery, his willingness to take on responsibility. I think it's probably time, I don't know if we can crown him our most important player. I don't know if we need to do that, but I think it's certainly time to acknowledge him as one of the leaders of this team. I think he's absolutely taken on that mantle at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. And I think,
what do you think of the defensive side of his game?
It's always been very good. I don't think I've ever... Like sometimes, what he tries to do defensively doesn't work. That's inevitable. Sometimes a defender or you try and make a tackle and someone gets past you. But I don't think I've ever looked at Bukayo Saka and said, why aren't you back there? Why aren't you chasing back? Why aren't you in position? Like, it's so rare that I can't really remember it happening. I'm sure there have been occasions, but ultimately when the opposition are on the attack, he's usually in position defensively to do his job. And of course, that's what Mikel Arteta demands of all of his players. Not just Bukayo Saka, but still, when you have the amazing ability that he has from a forward perspective, there is, how many times have you seen players with Saka's attacking quality just not do anything defensively? Because they sort of feel like, well, that's not my job, or it's beneath me, or whatever. And I think Saka is quite emblematic of this team and its work ethic, that everybody has a job to do, not just in the position or the area of the pitch that they like to do it, but in other areas too. And for all the talk, as I mentioned in the first half, for all the talk of Martinelli not scoring, do you ever see him just amble around and not do his job defensively? No. I think these players deserve a huge amount of credit. The fact that Saka can combine that with such incredible end product, though, is amazing. It's amazing. I think he has set expectation levels so high. In some ways, we don't really acknowledge how good he is from an attacking perspective, how good his numbers are this season. 4 Premier League games, 1 goal, 4 assists. He's a goal contribution every single game, and he was sort of on that track last season as well for a while. The consistency of his output is unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, we love him. What can I say?
What can you say?
What about this? Pete Coe says, "Good morning, gents. Now that we've seen a bit of Ethan Ranieri in an important league game, is it possible we see him start midweek?" I think that's especially given Saka's potential absence.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. I'd still say a little bit unlikely, but possible for sure. It depends on how Arteta views, the game on Sunday versus the game on Thursday. Like, I don't think it's going to be an easy game or a walkover away in Italy against Atalanta, who won the what did they win last season? They beat Bayer Leverkusen, didn't they?
Europa League, yeah.
Yeah, so there are no mugs. So I think we'll see some changes, whether Nwaneri is the guy to come in. Could he play in the Odegaard position? Can Rice or sort of Jorginho and Partey, like Rice will be back for this game on Thursday as well. So you imagine he comes straight into midfield. Mm-hmm. It's how he reshuffles them. Will it be Jorginho? Will it be Partey? And who plays ahead of him then? I don't know. But I'd like to see it. I think we're getting closer and closer to a point where Nwaneri is going to start. This is a difficult week, though. 3 away games. And, Arteta talks about confidence and belief from yesterday's game. I think he'll be keen to maintain momentum going into the game on Sunday. So I don't quite know how much he's going to change things around.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a question to that effect, which was like, I think it was the running knee surgeon said, how many players would you rest on Thursday? Surely the City game is more important. I mean, what are your expectations in terms of rotation? It's a big game Thursday.
It is a big game. I mean, we might see, for example, if there's any doubt whatsoever about Bukayo Saka, then you've got Raheem Sterling.
Yeah, I wonder if those two who were the first off the bench on Sunday, Sterling and Jesus, I could see them coming in.
Yeah. Beyond that, it depends how Calafiori is. Rice will be back because he's absent through suspension rather than injury. I don't think there's any chance we'll see Odegaard for a few weeks anyway. And Zinchenko.
I guess one of Partey or Jorginho will probably come out for Rice, right?
Yeah.
And I think it would be too much of them to ask, really, especially if they're in contention for Sunday, which you imagine one of them will be. So, yeah, I think we'll probably see a max. I don't expect more than 3 changes.
Me neither. I think you look at this being early season and, it's not a period where you would necessarily expect fatigue to be a big issue.
No.
So he's going to ask those players, but, you do have those options up front now, with Jesus and Sterling could fill a couple of those places. Maybe Saka and Martinelli.
Yeah,
that's how you do it.
My instinct, I think Trossard did well, kind of linking the play, and I think Saka and Martinelli might be the two to rotate out. But we say this, but he picks Bukayo Saka every game, doesn't he? So
yeah.
Nothing would surprise me. I don't think that he's going to make half a dozen changes. I don't think he can, really.
No, I don't think so. Think so. He's got to be pragmatic. There aren't a lot of options available to him. If you have those other 5 players, maybe you do have more options. Where I wonder about Timber.
Right, given the history.
Yeah, I just wonder if they
what have you got? Kivior,
potentially Calafiori. It depends on what the update is on him. But is Kivior for an away game in the Champions League? I'm not going to say perfect, but maybe the right kind of replacement if you do have some concerns about Timber. You did talk about Timber and Jorginho. Timber hasn't played a great deal. He's only getting back to match fitness. Do you want him? He hadn't
played at all, had he?
Jorginho hadn't played since April, I don't think. This is his first 90 minutes for 5 months, and he was obviously cramping up quite a bit.
Times, yeah.
You could see that. So I wonder if that might be an option. But, we'll hear a little bit more, I guess, from the manager over the course of this week. And he'll have a press conference on Wednesday, I'm sure. And maybe we'll get some update then. We'll see who's on the plane.
Yeah. I'm sure Mikel will tell us.
Oh, he will. Yeah, he's very forthcoming about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, very open. And by the way, Martin Odegaard, you said you wouldn't expect to see him for a few weeks. I mean, I concur with that. I know Arteta said sort of played his cards very close to his chest in the press conference, but I think even the best possible outcome of those scans, I don't see any way he's going to be available in the next 7 days.
Yeah. No.
And I'd be quite surprised if it was before the international break, but let's see.
Okay. What about this? A couple of questions about what we did yesterday. Daniel Constable on Discord. Thoughts on the 4-4-2 setup when we weren't in possession? Do you think this can be used in big games going forward? I really like the press from Trossard and Havertz together. And a couple of other ones tactically. TK_Samuels on Discord. These days, it seems like every manager has a certain play style they stick to religiously. One of Arteta's biggest strengths seems to be how happy he is to adapt the team style to the demands of the game. And 1.76 acres, from a coaching standpoint, is there a better thing to see than Arteta not overthinking the game? Not doing a Pep-like galaxy brain, like, why'd he put that guy there? He did the pragmatic thing, it worked out well. He's mature. Did we see another level of coaching growth displayed yesterday?
Maybe. I mean, on that last one, I feel like it's so hard. It's all result. Analysis is so result driven. If we hadn't won, I'm sure there'd be people saying, well, Jorginho's not a number 8 and Havertz isn't a midfielder and, Trossard played centre forward, but we had Havertz available. People always find a way for it to be wrong. And when you win, you're always right.
Yeah.
I think that there is a sort of consistency of selection now. I think that Arteta has moved away from that sort of rabbit out the hat, Willian false 9 kind of habit that he had in big games. I mean, the 4-4-2, I don't think is especially novel or new. I think that's kind of what we do out of possession. We make it very difficult for teams to play through us. 2 banks of 4. Yesterday it was Havertz and Trossard pressing, but it's often Havertz and Odegaard.
Yeah.
There's something incredibly almost old-fashioned about that. And there was lots of times in the game yesterday where we looked, like a kind of 90s 4-4-2 team.
Did you watch Match of the Day too?
No, I heard the analysis was good though, actually.
Yeah, I mean, they showed the Arsenal shape at times, basically a 5-3-2 when Tottenham had possession.
With Partey dropping in deep, yeah.
So again, I sort of ascribe to this idea that sometimes the simple thing is the best, but sometimes it's the only thing you have available to you. I don't know that he really, like for all the various midfield permutations, there really seemed to be one likely outcome in terms of how we would play. And, he asked players to dig in and work hard defensively in positions that they're accustomed to playing in a system that, you learn very quickly when you play football. Pretty much everybody starts 4-4-2, don't they? And you understand that. I think that is the sort of the baseline for all the other formations that you apply. So, I don't know that he really could have done a great deal more. It was as much about how the players executed that game plan, which we talked about in the first half.
I also think that what it's about really is adapting in-game and understanding the game that's unfolding in front of you and reacting to that and then leaning into or leaning on your strengths. I mean, we'll never know probably, but I still think that Mikel Arteta, when he was designing the game plan and thinking it through and envisaging it all in his head, I don't think he thought, okay, we're going to have 36% possession. I think he would have had a plan that involved Arsenal being more dominant and proactive than they were across the course of the 90 minutes. That would be my guess. But it's about ensuring that if that is what happens, like if that is the game you get, are you doing absolutely everything you can to maximize your chances of taking points away from it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where leaning on things like set pieces, good organisation and defending and commitment and work rate, good shape, good structure. When you don't play the perfect game, those are kind of the foundations that enable you to get results nonetheless.
Yeah.
And I think that's really Arteta's real skill, is that he realizes we cannot always play beautiful, flowing Arsene Wenger football. So what principles can we have in our game that mean that when it doesn't click, we've still got a very good chance of winning?
Yeah.
And I think that is the pragmatist in him. And that's, to be honest, why we're so good now at accumulating points.
Yeah. Look, it was an imperfect performance. Was it very disciplined and organized? Yes. But on the ball, I think we could have done a lot more. That was something Arteta acknowledged. I was looking at the pass completion percentages. Normally for an Arsenal game, most of the players are in around 85, 90%. Starting with the keeper, in the formation, 62% for Raya, 84% White, 80% Gabriel. He's usually up in the 90s. Saliba, 97%, because, of course. Timber, 52%. Martinelli, 70%. Partey, 81%. Jorginho, 80%. Saka, 82%. Havertz, 63%. Trossard, 75%. Those are numbers which mean you have not controlled the game in any significant way. And again, I think we understand why. I think we understand the reasons. And I think there was probably a discussion of, before the game that when Tottenham have possession, let's not retreat, but let's lean into where, as you said in the first half, we are really strong, which is our defensive shape and our defensive organization. A bit sort of fucking Gandalf, if you like. You shall not pass. And they kept trying. They kept trying to come down the middle.
Dominic Solanke as the Balrog. This hulking, hideous monster.
Yeah.
And Gabriel's there, the bearded Gabriel with his staff.
Fucking Jurian Gimli with his, with his big mallet or whatever the dwarves have. Yeah, it's that, There's a lot to like about that.
There is. And I think as Arsenal fans, maybe do you know what? There are certain teams and certain clubs where I don't know if they would take quite as much pride in it. But as Arsenal fans, it is in our DNA.
It is, yeah.
It's part of the identity and tradition of the club. This strong back line, 1-0 to the Arsenal. That is part of our heritage. And actually, I think we relish and embrace it in ways that other supporters might not necessarily.
Maybe not. I love it, though, I have to say. I think, I love attacking football. I love brilliant skills. I love fast-flowing moves that end in goals. But I also love a team that can really defend. I love watching good defenders because people think, you sort of, with footballers, it's like, okay, the guys who can't really score goals, they play at the back. But, it is about, there's so much to the art of defending, if you like. And, what you need to be a great defender. We have experienced some not so great defenders in our time at Arsenal, and they can be very frustrating because, when a defender isn't good, you concede a lot of goals. When your defenders are good and your organization is good and your tactics are good and your discipline is good, you have a much better chance of winning games like this where you don't play as well as you can with the ball, but you have the ability to shut out the opposition and you have the strength and the character and the belief and the determination to get a goal from somewhere. And that strength that we have in set pieces, was the difference yesterday. I fucking love watching good defenders. I really do. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're very blessed with quite a few of those at the moment. We had a request from Rubes on the Discord who says, goodly morning, gents. Can we please get some hashtag Ange out?
Oh, I didn't look at this.
I've had a little look, Andrew.
Okay.
Let me get them up in front of me now. I mean, they are unhappy, the Spurs fans, at the present point in time, which is great.
Yes.
And I think the tables, I do get the sense that sort of the tide is turning on Ange, that the sort of shtick has worn thin. Anyway, listen, here's some tweets. Okay. I like this one because it's from @HKaneForever. How did that work out for you, mate? And he says, 0 London derby wins, which is true, and ignores the obvious problem in set pieces. I had enough. Sack this cunt. And then #Ange out. And then he's got a picture of Ange. It's black and white. And then in red writing over the top, it says, #, no to Postecoglou. We deserve better.
No, you don't. No, you fucking don't. You don't deserve any better than that.
I liked this one. Harry Hotspur at JRC 1969. Postecoglou needs to go. Any manager who brought in Johnson and Werner for a second loan spell after a shit first one, then has Solanke as his main fucking target in a transfer window is a fucking clown. #Ange out. Levy and co can fuck off as well. They've destroyed this club. #Levy out.
Everyone out.
Yeah. And this is, again, similar vein from G. Tommy. 65 million Solanke can't score. 40 million Gray can't sniff the pitch. I don't know what that means, by the way. I don't know what they bought him for, but they're unhappy he's not sniffing the pitch.
Robbie
30
Fowler.
million Odebert, useless. 10 million Bergvall can't sniff the pitch. Why won't these players sniff the damn pitch?
What's on the pitch?
150k plus a week on Timo Werner. 45 million Johnson, useless. 40 million Maddison, and then he's got the arms crossed emoji. I don't really know what that signifies. What was it? Oh, it's the shrug emoji. Shrug emoji for 40 million Maddison.
Right.
And then he just says, the manager accepts this. #Ange out. #Levy out. #Enoch out.
Everyone out.
Everyone out. #everyone out. Have you seen that Postecoglou sort of guaranteed a trophy in his post-match interview?
I saw that interview, yeah, where he's,
I always win something in my second season, mate.
Oh, I might.
Yeah, they were like, you said you always win something in second season. He's like, yeah, I do fucking win something, and I'm going to win something. It's the shittest manager of the year award. The sack race, mate. I'm going to fucking win the sack race. Yeah, I mean, that seems like a mad thing to do.
It's a bold prediction for a Tottenham manager, isn't it, to suggest you're going to win something?
It's fantasy, Andrew, is what it is.
They deserve better, though, apparently.
Yeah, they do. I mean, listen, I just really enjoyed watching the wheels come off down the road. It's fantastic. I mean, they beat Everton this season. I think that's the only game they've won. And they were like, aha, the corner is turned. And then I think basically collectively footballers realised, I think that actually said a lot more about Everton.
Yeah. You know what, though, when it comes to Everton?
Yes.
Me and you, we could go to an old folks' home and we could just randomly pick 9 residents there.
Yeah.
Put them on a pitch with me and you, give Everton a 2-goal head start, and somehow we would still manage to win the game.
I know.
Or, sorry, Everton would somehow manage to lose the game. That might be the best way. It's
incredible what they're doing.
Holy shit.
Dyche innovating again.
It's unbelievable.
New levels he's unlocked.
Like, to be fair, it was a very good goal from John to win the game for Aston Villa the other night. But my goodness, 2-0 up for the second week in a row, second game in a row rather, and they end up losing 3-2.
It's not a good sign for a manager.
No, or a club, or a team, or a fan base. They're having a difficult time.
But I tell you what, the way Dyche is going, if Spurs are looking for a new manager, I might have a candidate for them.
They deserve Dyche.
They deserve each other.
That's exactly what we should do.
And what could be more Spursy than throwing away 2-goal leads in the dying moments of games to lose 3-2? It's a match made in hell.
It sure is. You deserve Dyche. That's our response from We Deserve to the We Deserve Better hashtag. You deserve Dyche. Oh man alive. Okay. Shall we get this podcast out?
Yeah, let's get it out because there's a lot Because, people got to get on with their lives. They've got to enjoy celebrating this today. And then pretty soon, focus turns to Atalanta.
But there's going to be, a lot of basking today. People are going to want to listen to a lot of podcasts. So,
right. Today is the day to drink it all.
Just soak it all in, all the Arsenal content you want, all the hashtag Anja, whatever content you want. Go get it. That's what we say. And of course, there is a lot going on. A little bit later, we'll be talking about all the weekend's Premier League action in a brand new episode of The 30. That's myself and Phil over on Patreon if you want to join us for that. It's patreon.com/Arseblog. Of course, later in the week, we'll preview the Atalanta game, and we'll talk to you a bit later on. Friday, obviously, fucking UEFA scheduling bastards. But we will talk to you on Friday to go over that game. For now, though, take it easy. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Fuck the Spurs, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.